There is a conversation that millions of people have, not with anyone else but with themselves. It happens late at night, or in the shower, or in the car on the way to a job that doesn't feel like the right one. It's quiet, it's private, and it goes something like this. I know what I'm capable of, but I don't know if the world is going to let me do it. Maybe you have felt it. The slow, grinding friction between who you are on the inside, your ambitions, your intelligence, your conviction, and what the world outside seems prepared to offer you. The gap between the life you can see in your mind and the life that is currently in front of you. Maybe it comes dressed as a job rejection, or a room where no one listens when you speak, or a system that seems designed for someone else, someone with a different background, a different accent, a different face. Or perhaps it arrives more quietly, as the accumulation of small moments where you were talked over, looked past, or handed a smaller role than the one you knew you were ready for. These are not small frustrations, they are real, and they accumulate like weight. Most people respond to that weight in one of two ways. They either carry it, silently, resentfully, waiting for the world to finally see them, or they set it down, and with it they quietly set down the dream. A very rare few do something else entirely. They pick up the weight, put it on their back, and decide that it will be the thing that makes them stronger. That every obstacle the world constructs will simply become part of their training. That the very resistance they face will forge in them something that a smooth, easy path never could. Margaret Hilda Thatcher was one of those rare few. And today we are not here to debate her policies or her politics. We are here to study something that belongs to every human being, regardless of ideology, the architecture of an unbreakable character. The question of how a person, facing real opposition, real condescension, real structural exclusion, builds and builds and builds until the walls come down. Before we get to Margaret, let us spend a moment being honest about the weight. Because one of the most damaging things we do to ourselves and to each other is to minimize it. To say, other people have it harder, stop complaining, just work harder. As if acknowledging difficulty were the same as surrendering to it. The truth is, most people are carrying something significant, and often what they are carrying is invisible to the room they are in. There is the person who grew up being told in 100 subtle and not so subtle ways that ambition was not for people like them. Whose parents worked hard but whose world was small, not from lack of love, but from lack of access. Who looked at the doors marked opportunity and understood without being told directly that those doors had not been built with them in mind. There is the person who is the first in their family to go to university, to start a business, to step into a boardroom, who has no map for the territory they are entering, who must build the bridge and cross it at the same time. There is the person who has a vision so clear and so large that it frightens the people around them, whose certainty is read as arrogance, whose confidence is called aggression, who has learned to make themselves smaller in rooms where their full size makes others uncomfortable. There is the person who has been told, again and again by systems and by individuals, that their moment is not now, be patient, wait your turn, the time isn't right. And so they wait, and the years pass, and the vision stays flickering quietly inside them, growing harder to see in the dark. Does any of this sound familiar? Because Margaret Thatcher knew every single one of these experiences, not as abstractions, as the texture of her daily life for years. And what she did with them is the lesson. Margaret Hilda Roberts was born in 1925 above her father's grocery shop in Grantham, a small town in Lincolnshire, England. Alfred Roberts was a grocer, a local councillor, a lay Methodist preacher, a man of deep convictions and modest means. The family lived in the flat above the shop. There was no hot running water. There was no garden. There was, in many respects, nothing that would mark this place as the origin point of one of the most consequential political careers in the 20th century. But Alfred Roberts gave his daughter something that money cannot purchase. He taught her to think. He filled the house with serious reading and serious conversation. He took her to lectures and debates. He modelled in his own life the idea that a person of ordinary background could hold and defend extraordinary convictions, and that character, not class, was the measure of a person. Margaret absorbed every word. She was brilliant in school, disciplined, focused, fiercely competitive in the academic sense. She won a place at Oxford to study chemistry, at a time when women at Oxford were still a minority, and still in many quarters an inconvenience. She threw herself into the Oxford Union debates, the famous training ground for British political life. and found that she could hold her own against men who had been educated at Eton and Harrow, who came from families that had been governing Britain for generations. She did not come from those families. She did not have their accents, their networks, their inherited ease in the rooms of power. What she had instead was preparation. Relentless, systematic, never-finished preparation. Here is the first lesson. What you lack in access, you can compensate for in preparation, but only if you are willing to work at a level that others are not. This is not a comfortable lesson. It is not the lesson that says the playing field is fair, or that hard work always wins, or that talent always finds its way to the surface. Those things are not reliably true. What is true is this: preparation is one of the few variables entirely within your control. You cannot control who your parents were, or what town you grew up in, or whether the door is currently open for someone like you. But you can control how ready you are when the door, any door, cracks open. Margaret walked into every room in her life over-prepared. She knew more than she needed to know. She had thought further ahead than others expected, and because of that she was never at the mercy of the room. Are you preparing at that level, or are you waiting to feel ready before you start? What followed Oxford was not a triumphant march to power. It was years of doors closing. Margaret stood for Parliament twice, in 1950 and 1951, in Dartford, a constituency she had no chance of winning, but where she built her skills and her reputation. She was 24 years old, a woman, the daughter of a grocer. Speaking about economics and governance, with a precision and confidence that unsettled people who believed those were not her subjects. She was rejected by constituency after constituency when she sought a winnable seat. The reasons given varied, but the undercurrent was consistent. She was too much, too ambitious, too certain. Too, a word that has been used against determined women in every era, difficult. She married Denise Thatcher, qualified as a barrister, had twins, and continued to pursue her political ambitions in parallel, doing what countless women have done and continue to do, carrying full weight in two directions simultaneously, with neither sphere fully understanding or acknowledging the other. She finally won a seat in Parliament in 1959, representing Finchley. She was 33 years old. The journey from ambition to first real foothold had taken the better part of a decade. Here is the second lesson: the years of no are not wasted years. They are the years in which your character is being manufactured. This is easy to say from a distance. It is brutally hard to live. When you are in the middle of the rejection, when the door closes again, when the explanation is vague or unfair or dishonest, when you watch someone less prepared than you move forward while you remain in place, it does not feel like character building. It feels like injustice, because sometimes it is injustice. But Margaret Thatcher did not emerge in 1979 as Prime Minister despite those years of no. She emerged because of them. Every closed door had sharpened her argument. Every dismissal had deepened her resolve. Every year she spent being underestimated had given her a quality that the people who had been handed their positions never quite developed: the absolute bone-deep knowledge that she had earned her place. No one could take that from her. No one could make her feel like an imposter in the rooms she had fought to enter, because she had not been given access. She had built it, brick by brick, across a decade of no's. Your no's are your bricks. Are you building with them or letting them bury you? In 1975, Margaret Thatcher did something that the British political establishment considered, at best, eccentric, and at worst, outrageous. She challenged Edward Heath for the leadership of the Conservative Party. Heath was the incumbent leader. He was a former Prime Minister. He was a man which, in the context of British political leadership at that point in history, was not incidental. It was simply assumed to be the permanent state of affairs. No woman had led a major British political party. The idea was not so much opposed as it was simply not taken seriously. Margaret took it seriously. She campaigned methodically. She built alliances. She made her case not with apology or with the performance of modesty that might have made her ambitions more palatable to those who found them unsettling, but directly, on the merits, with the full force of her conviction that she was right about the direction the party and the country needed to go. She won. And then, 4 years later, she won the general election and became the first female Prime Minister in British history. The Soviet newspaper that had been hostile to her hardline foreign policy gave her a nickname intended as an insult. They called her the Iron Lady. She adopted it immediately. She wore it like a decoration. Here is the third lesson. When your opponents name you, choose whether to be diminished by the label or defined by it. The Iron Lady. Think about what that phrase contains. Iron, cold, rigid, unyielding was meant to suggest that she was inhuman, mechanical, without warmth or flexibility. What she heard was something else entirely. She heard strong, she heard unbreakable, she heard exactly what I am. The names we are given, the dismissive labels, the reductive categories, the words people use to shrink us when our size makes them uncomfortable, those names have only the power we assign to them. Margaret Thatcher looked at Iron Lady and saw not a cage but a crown. What are the labels that have been placed on you? Too intense, too ambitious, too serious, too much. What would happen if, instead of apologizing for those things, you claimed them? If you said, yes, that is precisely what I am and it is exactly what the moment requires. Margaret Thatcher served as Prime Minister for 11 years, 1979 to 1990, the longest continuous tenure of any British Prime Minister in the 20th century. Those years were not smooth. They were not universally successful. They were, in many ways, defined by conflict. The Falklands War of 1982. The miners' strike of 1984 to 1985. The battles over Europe, over economic policy, over the direction of Britain's future. She made decisions that were deeply unpopular, not because she was indifferent to public opinion, but because she had a quality that is rarer than talent, rarer than intelligence, rarer perhaps than courage itself. She knew what she believed, and she acted on it. In a world of constant polling, constant repositioning, constant testing of which way the wind is blowing before committing to a direction, this is a radical act. To look at a difficult problem, form a view and hold it, not because you are deaf to other perspectives, but because you have examined those perspectives and found your own position to be right. She famously said, when her cabinet urged her to reverse economic policies that were causing short-term pain, "You turn if you want to, the lady's not for turning." That line was not bravado. It was the expression of something that had been built over decades, a relationship with her own convictions so deep and so tested that external pressure, however loud, could not dislodge it. Here is the fourth lesson. Conviction without courage is just an opinion. Courage without conviction is just recklessness. The combination of the two is leadership. Most of us know at some level what we believe. About our work, our relationships, the direction our life should go. The problem is not knowledge. The problem is that acting on that knowledge in the face of opposition, misunderstanding, or simple social pressure requires a quality of character that must be deliberately built. It does not arrive automatically. It does not come with the territory of being smart or talented or good-intentioned. It must be practiced, in small decisions before it can hold in large ones. The courage to say what you actually think in a meeting. The courage to pursue what you actually want instead of what you're expected to want. The courage to hold your position when the room pushes back. These are the rehearsals. Margaret's 11 years were the performance, but the rehearsals came first. Margaret Thatcher left office in 1990, brought down ultimately not by an election but by her own party, a deeply painful end to an extraordinary tenure. She had reshaped Britain, influenced economic thinking across the Western world, and helped accelerate the end of the Cold War alongside Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II. She also made mistakes. She had blind spots. There are communities in Britain for whom her legacy carries real and lasting pain. Greatness and fallibility are not opposites, they coexist, as they do in every complex human life. But what cannot be taken from her, what belongs to her completely, is the journey. The girl above the grocery shop who decided that the rooms of power were not off-limits to her, simply because they had been off-limits before. The young woman who stood in constituency after constituency, absorbing rejection and kept standing. The politician who took a nickname meant to diminish her and turned it into an identity. The leader who said, "I know what I believe," and acted accordingly, even when it cost her. That journey is not a Conservative story or a Labour story. It is not a British story or even a political story. It is a human story. About what happens when a person decides, in the face of every reason to decide otherwise, that the gap between who they are and what the world is currently offering them is not a permanent state. That the weight they are carrying is not going to crush them, it is going to build them. That the years of no are not the verdict. That the voice inside them, the one that speaks at 2 a.m., that knows what they are capable of, that will not be entirely silenced no matter how long the wait, that voice is not delusional. It is simply ahead of schedule. You have something to build, a conviction to act on, a room to walk into fully without apology, without performing a smaller version of yourself for the comfort of others. The door may not be open yet. Build anyway. The lady is not for turning. Neither are you.